York Sheraton Hotel. It's the 1983 National Football League Collegiate Draft.
48th Annual National Football League Selection Meeting is now in session.
And before we go, we got Chicago now just working on their table. Let's stay with it for just a couple of moments and see what transpires, because they are ready to take their pick. The Bears with their first of two picks. Don Weiss has the card. He'll go up to the commissioner and get the first pick of two. The second would be from Tampa Bay later in this first round. The Bears with two #1 picks in the first round. Here's the commissioner.
Trade. That's a trade card. I can see by the expression on his face.
Chicago Bears. The Bears pick on the first round. Jimbo Covert, tackle, Pittsburgh.
Okay, two tackles, two big tackles have gone so far in this first round. Hitting from Northwestern, Jimbo Covert, one of the strongest offensive tackles ever to play at the college game from the University of Pittsburgh. Now goes to the Chicago Bears.
And go back overall to the #6 selection belonging to Chicago in the first round of this draft. We're speaking about offensive tackle Jimbo Covert out of the University of Pittsburgh, one of the premier offensive linemen, obviously, as seen by the way he was selected. Dick Steinberg of the New England Patriots, player personnel man, knows his people around the pros, and here are his thoughts on Jimbo.
Jimbo Covert is he is just a big, physical, tough guy. I mean, he's mentally tough and he's physically strong enough to knock people off the line of scrimmage. You can't jerk him or pull him rushing the passer. He's not the niftiest guy in the world, but he's so big and so strong, and he's a long way to get around protecting, and he's got good technique. All those pit linemen block just like the NFL guys do.
Yeah, look, the Bears, it's obvious they need some help. They finally have a quarterback, as we mentioned before, in Jim McMahon. Jim McMahon doesn't have the greatest of knees in the world. He's not the most mobile back there. And Walter Payton the last couple of years has sued for non-support. So perhaps with Covert, 280 pounds, that's one of the heaviest listings. You know, most of these guys are 265, 270, but 280. So it will take a few seconds to get around Covert if he is in there, and that's the time they need, McMahon needs to throw the ball down. But good choice for the Bears.
Here's a fellow who was a defensive lineman at one point, Bud, and has a bit of a nasty streak, which you've got to have to play in the pits like that in the trenches.
I think you have to have it to be a football player. But the key thing about Covert is his strength and his mental toughness and his really true aggressiveness.
He is 6'5", 280 pounds, timed at 5'15", but you're not necessarily looking for foot speed per se over 40 yards for a tackle. He is the #6 selection overall for Pittsburgh.
Covert was a starter on Pitt's offensive front his final 3 seasons, surrendering just 3 sacks during that span. As a consensus All-American his senior year, he did not give up a single sack. He started in 110 games over 8 years. He was a 2-time All-Pro, and a 2-time Pro Bowler. He was named to the National Football League 1980s All-Decade Team. In 2020, he was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
We are waiting on the Chicago Bears selection. They've already taken Jimbo Covert, the tackle from Pittsburgh, as their first selection in the first round. This second selection is as a result from Tampa Bay and the Booker Reese deal. That's Rudy Custer on the right. Custer, the business manager of the Chicago Bears, and Dan Gleason on the left, as they await the word from Chicago, from Jim Finks and company, as they try to put together their second first-round pick.
But Chicago had to make sure they got the offensive lineman they wanted, so they didn't want to make that deal with the 6th pick. Well, they have the offensive lineman they want. Now they have an 18th choice. Everyone thinks Willie Gault, but with time ticking away, under 3 minutes now, what we might be seeing is that the Elway thing coming back again, because Finks figures he can give up that pick. Hallis figures he won't have to pay another #1 draft pick and get a pretty good player from the Raiders, maybe even 2 players, and another pick somewhere else down the draft.
Looks like they may have filled out 2 cards as we have sat here. It's a question of which one they're going to pull and which one they're going to hear. Here it is. Down the count goes.
They're going to blast off Rudy Custer if they don't make it.
There's the card. Here's the commission.
Chicago selection. First round, wide receiver, Willie Gault from Tennessee.
Galt, as had been expected and rumored, goes to the Chicago Bears. So the Bears have 2 first-round picks, Jimbo Covert of Pittsburgh and Willie Gault of Tennessee, the first wide receiver taken in this draft.
Backtracking to Willie Gault, who has been selected, the Olympic class, the Olympic runner out of Tennessee. Look at that 4.43 speed. And was on the Olympic team back in 1980. An excellent kick returner. That it might be his forte. Tied an NCAA record back in 1980 when he had 3 kickoff returns for a touchdown. And from scrimmage, an excellent player.
Well, the thing that's different about Gault, most sprinters are taught to run with their weight too far forward. They're trying to get that straight-ahead speed. But this man has got the agility, as you can see here, to change direction without losing speed. And he's also got great hands, great eyes, catches the ball.
Averaging about 27 yards as a junior in kickoff returns, and caught 8 touchdown passes over the last 2 seasons and had about 650 yards in receptions.
Gault qualified for the 1980 U.S. Olympic team and would have participated in the 1980 Summer Olympics in Moscow had the United States not boycotted the event. He played in 83 games over 5 years. He caught 202 passes for 4,104 yards and scored 30 touchdowns. Prior to the 1988 season, the Bears traded him to the Los Angeles Raiders for their number 1 pick in the 1989 draft. With their second-round pick, the Chicago Bears selected Mike Richardson, a cornerback out of Arizona State. He played in 97 games over 6 years. He had 23 interceptions and scored a 90-yard touchdown.
I'm standing by with a Notre Dame fan, a Notre Dame player who was waiting to be drafted, Dave Duerson, and a teammate of yours was just selected. What can you tell us about Tony Hunter going to Buffalo?
Well, I was a little bit surprised that Tony lasted so long. I think maybe the entire country was surprised that Tony lasted so long. But Buffalo definitely got a great choice in Tony Hunter.
How do you think he'll mesh into the Buffalo system, coming from the college system and Gary Moeller?
Well, I think right away he's going to have an impact on the NFL. Tony's, say, a clone to a Kellen Winslow or Ozzie Newsome or someone like that. And I think Tony's going to really show up the league. I think he's going to do a great job.
Okay, you're still waiting. Are you nervous at all sitting here waiting to be drafted?
Well, yeah, you know, I think right now I'm just going back in retrospect about my entire career as a high school player, as a college player, just trying to rehash the entire thing, just waiting.
Okay, good luck to you, and we'll be watching for your reaction in just a moment. Now let's go back to New York.
With their third-round pick, the Chicago Bears selected Dave Duerson, a safety out of Notre Dame. He played in 111 games over 7 years. He had 18 interceptions. He was a 2-time All-Pro and a 4-time Pro Bowl selection. With their fourth-round pick, the Chicago Bears selected Tom Thayer, a guard out of Notre Dame. The Bears drafted him not knowing that he had just signed a contract with the USFL Chicago Blitz. After 2 years in the USFL, he signed with the Chicago Bears, who still owned his rights, and went on to play in 134 games over 8 years. With their 8th-round pick, the Chicago Bears selected Richard Dent, a defensive end out of Tennessee State. He played in 157 games over 12 years. He had 135 sacks, 8 interceptions, and scored 2 touchdowns. He was a 4-time All-Pro and a 4-time Pro Bowl selection. He was the 1985 Super Bowl MVP. In 2011, he was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. With their 8th-round pick, the Chicago Bears selected Mark Bortz, a guard out of Iowa. He played in 184 games over 12 years. He was a two-time Pro Bowl selection. After going undrafted in the 1983 NFL Draft, Dennis McKinnon was signed by the Bears. He played in 93 games over 6 years. He caught 200 passes for 3,185 yards, and scored 29 touchdowns. He had 1,242 return yards.